It was late at night when Emma noticed the first strange thing. She had just moved into the quiet suburban neighborhood, hoping for peace and a fresh start after a difficult breakup. The neighbors seemed friendly enough, always waving as she drove past or chatting briefly when they caught her in the yard. But there was something off, a feeling she couldn't quite shake. That night, as she lay in bed, she heard it. A scratching sound, soft but persistent. At first she thought it was just the wind or perhaps the house settling, but as the minutes dragged on it became clearer. Someone was tapping at her window. She froze, trying to make sense of the situation. Her heart raced in her chest as she cautiously peered out through the blinds. There was nothing, yet the scratching continued. She quickly dismissed the thought of it being an animal. No, this was different. There was something deliberate in the sound. It was as if whoever was doing it knew exactly how to send a chill down her spine. Too afraid to investigate, Emma pulled the covers over her head, hoping it would all just go away. But the noise didn't stop. It grew louder, closer, and then there was a knock at the door. Story 1. The Whispering Neighbor. Emma had only been living in the house for a few days when she met the neighbor next door, Mr. Jones. He was an elderly man, stooped with age, his hands trembling slightly as he greeted her with a weak smile. He had lived in the house next door for years and was known to be a bit of a recluse, but that didn't seem unusual in such a quiet neighborhood. People often stayed to themselves. Here and Emma, in her search for solitude, welcomed that. Still, there was something unsettling about Mr. Jones. His smile never reached his eyes, and his voice when he spoke had a hushed quality, as if he was trying to keep his words secret. But Emma was new, eager to make friends, and so she politely listened, nodding at his tales of the good old days, and how he used to know every person in the neighborhood. She noticed his house was always dimly lit, with the curtains drawn tight even in the middle of the day. His voice had a strange cadence, as if there were more to his words than he was letting on. One evening, just a week after moving in, Emma was woken in the middle of the night by a soft tapping at her window. Her heart dropped as the familiar scratching sound echoed through her bedroom again. It wasn't wind this time. The noise was deliberate, rhythmic, almost like a signal. Trembling, she pulled back the curtain slightly and glanced outside. Mr. Jones stood in his yard, just beyond the fence that separated their properties. He was staring directly at her window, motionless, his lips barely moving as if whispering something to her, though she couldn't hear a word. His eyes were wide, glassy, and filled with something sinister. Shivers ran down her spine, but she forced herself to look away, certain she had to be imagining things. Maybe it was a prank or something from the neighborhood kids. She didn't know, but she tried to brush it off, hoping it was just the stress of the move getting to her. The next morning, she went about her usual routine, but the unease lingered. As she stepped outside to grab the morning paper, she noticed something strange. Her neighbor, Mr. Jones, was standing by his fence, his face expressionless as he stared at her. "Morning, Emma," he said in that whispering voice, though he was several feet away. "It's a beautiful day, isn't it? I see you're adjusting. Well, to the house, I always knew you'd be the one." Yeah," Emma stammered, taken aback by how eerily specific his words felt. "Thanks." She couldn't shake the feeling that he had been watching her, even when she hadn't noticed. That evening she stayed up late feeling an intense pressure, a sense of being watched. She began hearing faint whispers that seemed to come from nowhere, murmurs that she couldn't make out but that seemed to be growing louder and more frantic. The whispers seemed to echo through the walls, and they only grew louder when the moon was high in the sky. Soon, Emma could no longer ignore the fact that it wasn't just the wind or her imagination. Every time she was alone, she felt as though Mr. Jones was right outside, whispering things, words she couldn't understand but words that rattled her very bones. One night, she couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed a flashlight and went out into the yard, determined to confront the source of the noises. Her eyes darted nervously as she approached the fence, the whispers seeming to come from all directions. And then she saw him again, Mr. Jones, standing by the fence in the same spot, his eyes locked onto her. "Leave,"